the speech you need to hear before it's too late. I want to ask you a question, and I want you to answer it honestly, not for me, but for yourself. If your life continues exactly the way it's going right now, same habits, same excuses, same schedule, same thinking, where will you be in 5 years? Not where you hope to be, not where you dream of being when you're lying in bed at night. Where will you actually be? I want you to sit with that question for a second, because most people never ask it, and that's exactly why most people never change. They wait. They wait for Monday, they wait for January, they wait for the new year, the new job, the new relationship, the new circumstance that's going to magically rearrange their life for them. And I'm here today to tell you something that took me years to learn and nearly cost me everything before I learned it. Nothing changes until you change. Nothing gets better by chance. It gets better by change. And time, listen to me carefully, time does not wait for you to get ready. Time is going to pass either way. The only question is whether you're going to grow while it passes or just get older while it passes. I remember standing on a porch when I was 25 years old. A young man with a young family and a well-meaning charity worker knocked on my door. My wife had sent for help because we didn't have enough. And I stood there embarrassed, ashamed, taking a gift basket from a stranger because I could not provide for my own family. That day, something inside me cracked open, not broke, cracked open. Like the way you crack a seed so something can finally grow out of it. I thought I was a good person. I thought I worked hard. I thought I had good intentions. But good intentions, my friend, don't pay the bills, and good intentions don't build a life. That day I asked myself the most important question I have ever asked. How did I let this happen? And the answer was not the economy. It was not my boss. It was not my luck. It was not my family or my upbringing or the government or the weather. The answer was me. I had let years slip by without ever deciding to become someone different than I already was. I had confused being busy with being productive. I had confused having a job with having a plan. And once I saw that clearly, once I stopped blaming the world outside and started looking at the world inside, everything began to change. Let me tell you something that will either upset you or wake you up, and I hope it's the second one. It is not what happens to you that determines the quality of your life. It is what you do with what happens to you. Two men can lose their job on the same day. One goes home, drinks himself into self-pity, and spends the next 6 months complaining about the company that wronged him. The other goes home, looks in the mirror, and says, "This is the day I finally build something of my own." Same circumstance, two completely different lives that follow. The event was identical. The outcome was entirely determined by the person, not the event. So the next time you're tempted to say, well, if only my parents had more money, if only I had gone to a better school, if only I had been born in a different place, if only my boss appreciated me, stop right there. Because somewhere, right now, someone with less than you, with a harder story than yours, with more obstacles than you've ever faced, is out there building the life you say is impossible. And if they can do it, the door is open for you too. It's not shut. It was never shut. You just stopped walking toward it. Here is something I want you to write down because it is one of the most valuable lessons a mentor ever gave me. He said, Mr. Rohn, don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. Don't wish for fewer problems, wish for more skills. Don't wish for less challenge, wish for more wisdom. Because the moment you start wishing that life would just get easier, you stop growing. But the moment you start wishing that you would get stronger, wiser, more disciplined, more valuable to the world around you, the whole game changes. Your income rarely exceeds your own personal development because income is not something you pursue, it's something you attract by the person you become. If you want more, you have to become more. It's that simple and it's that hard. Now let me talk to you about time, because time is the one thing none of us can buy back. You can lose your money and make it again. You can lose your health in many cases and rebuild it. You can lose relationships and, if you're fortunate, repair them. But you cannot buy back a single day that has already passed. And I want you to think about the years you have already let slip by without a plan. I'm not saying this to shame you. I'm saying it because someone needs to say it plainly, without sugarcoating it, without softening it so much that it doesn't land. You have already spent years of your one and only life on autopilot. Or maybe you told yourself you'd start next month. Maybe you told yourself once things settle down. But things never settle down, my friend. Life doesn't wait for calm water before it asks you to grow. You grow in the middle of the storm or you don't grow at all. I ask people all the time, How long has it been since you read a book that actually changed the way you think? How long has it been since you sat in silence and asked yourself what kind of person you actually want to become? Not what job you want, not what car you want, but what kind of person? Most people can't answer that question, and that's a tragedy, because if you don't know what kind of person you're trying to become, then every single day you're just drifting. And drifting feels comfortable in the moment. But drifting is the slowest way to arrive at a life you never wanted. You don't drift into a strong marriage. You don't drift into a healthy body. You don't drift into a fortune. You don't drift into wisdom. Those things are the result of deliberate, daily, disciplined choices made over years by someone who refused to stay the same. Let me give you the philosophy of the poor and the philosophy of the wealthy, because this single distinction changed my entire financial life. The poor spend their money and invest what's left over, if there is anything left over, which there rarely is. The wealthy invest their money first and spend what's left over. It doesn't matter how much you make. What matters is your philosophy. I've seen people making very little money who live like kings because they mastered this discipline early. And I have seen people making extraordinary incomes who are one paycheck away from disaster because they never learned to pay themselves first, to invest in their future self before they gratify their present self. The same is true, by the way, not just with money, but with your mind, with your health, with your character. Invest in yourself first. Read before you relax. Learn before you scroll. Build before you binge. Discipline before comfort every single day. And watch what happens to your life in 5 years. I want to tell you about a woman I met years ago, a powerful, accomplished executive, running departments, commanding rooms, making more money than most people dream of. And I asked her, how did you get here? Because she never finished high school. She never went to college. And she told me something I have never forgotten. She said, when I was a young mother, I asked my husband for $10 one day, and he looked at me and said, what for? She said something in her broke wide open in that moment. She said, before that day was over, I decided I would never, ever ask again. Not out of bitterness, but out of a fierce, quiet resolve. She went out, found opportunity, educated herself outside the walls of any institution, took every class she could find, read every book she could get her hands on, and built a career, a life, an identity that no one could ever question again. That, my friend, is the power of disgust turned into direction. That is what happens when enough becomes enough, and instead of staying bitter, you get busy. I want you to understand something about resolve, because most people misunderstand it entirely. A little girl once told me the best definition of resolve I have ever heard. I asked a room of students, who can tell me what resolve means? Most didn't know. And then one small voice from the back said, I think resolve means promising yourself you will never give up. Think about that. Not promising the world, not promising your boss, your spouse, your friends, promising yourself. Because at the end of the day, the promises you keep to yourself are the ones that determine who you become. How long should a baby try to learn to walk before you say, that's enough, give up? No mother on earth would ever say that. The baby falls and falls and falls again and gets back up again and again until walking is no longer a struggle, but a way of life. That is the model. That is exactly how you must approach every skill, every dream, every ambition you have ever buried, because it got difficult. Until. That's the word I want you to carry out of this room today. Not someday, until. You will read until your thinking changes. You will practice until your skill develops. You will show up until the results come. Not because it's easy, but because you promised yourself you would never give up. Now, I have to say something that might sting a little, but I say it with love, the way a good friend tells you the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Most people don't fail because life is too hard. Most people fail because they negotiate with themselves too easily. They say, I'll start tomorrow. And tomorrow becomes next week, and next week becomes next year, and next year becomes a decade, and one day they wake up and wonder where their life went. Don't let that be you. Don't let 5 years from now find you exactly where you are today, still making the same excuses, still telling the same story about why it hasn't happened yet. The market doesn't care about your excuses. Life doesn't negotiate with your reasons. The only thing that changes your results is changed behavior. Practice daily, whether you feel like it or not. Let me talk to you about the difference between wishing and deciding, because this distinction alone could change the entire trajectory of your life. Wishing is passive. Wishing says, I hope things get better. I hope I lose the weight. I hope my finances improve. I hope my relationships heal. But wishing has never built a single successful life in the history of the world. Deciding is different. Deciding is active. Deciding says, starting today, I am going to do the things that make this outcome inevitable, whether I feel like it or not, whether it's convenient or not, whether anyone notices or not. The moment you shift from wishing to deciding, your whole physiology changes. Your posture changes. Your conversations change. Your priorities change. Because now you're not hoping for a different life, you're building one, brick by brick, day by day, decision by decision. I want you to think about your health for a moment, because so many people neglect the one vehicle they have to carry out every dream they've ever had. You can have all the ambition in the world, but if your body breaks down before you get there, none of it matters. Taking care of yourself is not vanity, it is stewardship. It is respecting the only body you will ever be given in this life. And the same discipline that it takes to eat well, to move your body, to rest properly, that same discipline transfers into every other area of your life. Discipline is not a single skill you apply to one area. Discipline is a muscle. Build it in one place and it grows stronger everywhere. Now let me talk to you about relationships, because no amount of success means anything if you arrive at the finish line alone. Who are you spending your time with? This matters more than almost anything else, because you are the average of the conversations you have most often, the attitudes you're surrounded by, the standards the people around you accept as normal. If you spend your days with people who complain, who settle, who mock ambition because it makes them uncomfortable with their own lack of it, you will slowly, quietly begin to shrink to fit their expectations. But if you surround yourself with people who are striving, who are reading, who are building, who refuse to accept mediocrity as the price of comfort, you will be pulled upward without even realizing it's happening. Choose your circle as carefully as you choose your career, because it will shape you just as powerfully. Let me ask you the question that changes everything. Why? Why are you doing any of this? Why do you want to grow? Why do you want to change? Why do you want more out of this one life you've been given? If your why is weak, every obstacle will look like a good enough reason to quit. But if your why is strong enough, the how becomes almost irrelevant, because you will find a way. You will make a way. People with a powerful enough why don't wait for permission, don't wait for perfect conditions, don't wait for someone to hand them an opportunity. They create the opportunity because stopping was never an option to begin with. So I want you to sit down, maybe tonight, maybe as soon as this speech ends, and write out your list of whys. Why do you want to grow financially? Why do you want to become healthier? Why do you want to become wiser, kinder, stronger, more disciplined? Not vague answers, real ones. The kind that make you emotional when you write them, because those are the ones that will carry you through the days you don't feel like showing up. I want to remind you of something Mr. Schoaf told me many years ago, a lesson that reshaped how I saw the entire pursuit of success. He said, set a goal to become a millionaire, not for the money, but for what it will make of you to achieve it. Think about that for a moment, because it flips everything on its head. The real prize was never the number in the bank account. The real prize is the person you have to become in order to earn it. The discipline you build, the fear you overcome, the knowledge you accumulate, the resilience you develop after every failure along the way. That person once built can never be taken away from you, no matter what happens to the money. That is the true wealth, not what you get, what you become in the process of pursuing it. Now let's talk honestly about excuses, because I have heard every excuse there is, and I've used most of them myself at some point in my life. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I don't have the right connections. I didn't get the right education. I started too late. My situation is different. And I want to lovingly but firmly tell you something. Everyone has a reason available to them if they want one. Reasons are the easiest thing in the world to find. But the people who change their lives are not the people without valid reasons to quit. They are the people who decided their reasons for continuing were stronger than their reasons for quitting. That's it. That's the entire difference between the person who transforms their life and the person who explains for the rest of their life why they never did. I remember teaching a group of young people, and I asked them, how are you doing? And one young man said, I don't know, let's count. I love that answer, because economics, results, outcomes, they're measurable. You can count your savings. You can count the books you've read this year. You can count the pounds lost or gained, the relationships nurtured or neglected, the hours spent building versus the hours spent numbing yourself in front of a screen. If you don't like the numbers, don't argue with the number. Change the behavior that produced it. Numbers don't lie and numbers don't care about your feelings. They simply reflect with brutal honesty the sum of your daily choices over time. I want to challenge you on something specific. Read something valuable for at least 30 minutes a day. That's it, not hours. 30 minutes. Something instructional, something inspirational, something that challenges the way you currently think. Most people spend more time scrolling through other people's highlight reels than they do investing in their own mind, and then they wonder why their life doesn't change. One book can save you 5 years of trial and error. One book written by someone who already walked the path you're trying to walk, who already made the mistakes you're about to make, who already found the shortcuts you're searching for. And people don't read it. How do you explain that? The knowledge is sitting right there on a shelf, in a library, on a device in your pocket. And most people would rather stay comfortable in their ignorance than uncomfortable in their growth. Don't be like most people. Most people is not a compliment. Most people is a warning. Let me also tell you this. Standard education will give you standard results. There is nothing wrong with school, but school alone was never designed to make you wealthy, wise, or exceptional. If you want an exceptional life, you need an exceptional education. And that means becoming a self-taught student of success, of communication, of leadership, of discipline for the rest of your life. The moment you stop learning is the moment you stop growing. And the moment you stop growing is the moment you start. Quietly, invisibly, dying inside, long before your body actually gives out. Now here's where I want to be very direct with you, because I care too much about your future to be gentle about this. Or somewhere down the road, if you don't change course, you're going to look back on this exact moment, this exact day, and you're going to remember that you heard this message. You're going to remember that something inside you stirred, that something felt true, that something felt urgent. And the question is not whether you felt it. The question is what you did after you felt it. Feeling inspired for an hour means nothing if it doesn't turn into a decision. And a decision means nothing if it doesn't turn into action. Today, not tomorrow, not next week, not after the holidays, not after things settle down. Today, I want you to ask yourself 4 questions tonight, and I want you to actually write down the answers, because writing forces clarity that thinking alone never does. First, why? Why do you want to change? Get emotional about your answer. Second, why not? Why not you? Seeing how far you can go, how much you can learn, how much you can become. Third, why not you specifically, or not somebody else, not some other person with more resources or more luck? Why not you, exactly as you are right now, starting exactly where you're standing? And fourth, why not now? Because there is no better time coming. There is no perfect moment waiting on the calendar for you. There is only the moment you're in right now, reading these words, feeling something stir inside you that you have felt before and ignored before. Don't ignore it this time. I told you earlier about the day I stood on that porch, ashamed, embarrassed, holding a charity basket I never wanted to need. Let me tell you what happened after that day. I went to work on myself with a discipline I had never applied to anything before in my life. Not because it was easy, not because I felt motivated every single morning. Most mornings I didn't, but because I had finally made a decision that was bigger than my mood, bigger than my excuses, bigger than my fear. I started reading. I started listening to people who had already built the kind of life I wanted. I started tracking every dollar, every hour, every habit. I started treating my own development like the most important project of my life, because it was. Learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job, a mentor once told me. Because if you work hard on your job, you'll make a living. But if you work hard on yourself, you can make a fortune. That single shift in philosophy changed the entire direction of my life, and it can change the entire direction of yours too. I want you to imagine just for a moment the person you could become if you took the next 12 months seriously. Or not perfectly, not without setbacks, but seriously. Imagine what your finances would look like if you invested first and spent what was left consistently for a year. Imagine what your body would look like if you honored it with movement and proper rest instead of neglect. Imagine what your relationships would look like if you brought your full presence, your full patience, your full effort into them instead of the leftover scraps of a tired, distracted mind. Imagine what your character would look like if you kept every promise you made to yourself the way that little girl described resolve, promising yourself you would never give up. That person is available to you. That person is not a fantasy. That person is simply the result of decisions repeated daily over time. The only thing standing between who you are now and who that person is the choices you make starting today. I don't want you to leave here today merely inspired. Inspiration fades by tomorrow morning if you don't attach it to a decision. I want you to leave here changed in the quiet, determined way that real change actually happens. Not with fireworks, not with some dramatic before and after moment that people talk about for years. Real change usually happens quietly, in the decision to read instead of scroll, to save instead of spend carelessly, to show up instead of make excuses, to apologize instead of blame, to keep going instead of quitting. On the days nobody is watching and nobody would even know if you gave up, that's where the real life is built. Not in the big speeches, not in the moments of applause, in the small, unnoticed, disciplined choices that accumulate year after year into either a life of regret or a life of extraordinary accomplishment. The choice entirely belongs to you. So here is my final challenge to you, and I say this with everything I have. Don't let this be another speech you listened to and forgot by next week. Don't let this be another moment of temporary inspiration that dissolves the second life gets busy again. Take this seriously because your time is not unlimited, and I promise you, the version of yourself sitting 5 years from now, looking back at this exact moment, will either thank you for what you decided to do today or grieve the years you let slip by doing nothing at all. It's not what happens to you, it's what you do that changes everything. You have the ability, you have the mind, you have the time right now, today, to begin. Not tomorrow. Not when it's convenient, today. Why not you? Why not now? Go build the life you were always capable of building. The door has been open the entire time. All you have to do is walk through it.